From just a small 17th century town on the River Logan, Belfast grew. The landscape changed dramatically. To discover how, Rupert Kayser has come to meet local historian Stephen Cameron.
Can you explain to us what this area would have looked like about 300 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, really the way the river flowed down, this whole area would have been mud flats at the time. The river meandered very badly. It was a major problem for Belfast. Ships had to discharge cargoes outside really the confines of the river because it was so narrow and so shallow as well. So the Belfast Ballast Board decided that they would try and straighten the Lagan, and especially the bit just behind us here.
What the port authorities proposed was a mammoth undertaking. Rupert wants to find out exactly how they plan to transform acres of mudflats into a thriving deep harbor. He goes to visit Jonathan King, historian of the Belfast Harbour Commissioners.
Shipbuilding had started in Belfast in the 1790s.
Jonathan is able to show Rupert the original plans for the harbour's development.
It's hard to imagine, but the port actually starts here. The River Farset used to flow down Belfast's High Street into the River Lagan, and that's where the first wharf was built back in 1613. Now back then, none of this land existed.
So all this area here was sort of like mud flats at low tides?
All mud flats, all sandbanks, of not much use to man nor beast.
Using Jonathan's map as a starting point, we can see just how drastically the shape of the coast was altered. The harbor authorities cut a straight channel from the town to the sea. The mud and materials they took from the dredging were used to create all this land. The Titanic would be built on an artificial island called Queen's Island. It is the size of 20 football fields.
What I find particularly amazing, and I think what a lot of people to this day find staggering, is that in the middle of the 19th century, how on earth could you have created such a huge area of industrial land without the use of the big machines we have today?
Yeah, so it was a huge undertaking. You have to imagine men with spades in the mud, in the sleet, digging this out physically. It was back-breaking, dirty, hard work. But it was a wonderful benefit because it gave Belfast the land and the space it needed to become shipbuilders to the world.
By 1909, Belfast City Harbor and Dockyard was a vast site. The workers believed that their shipyard was the best in the world, and they were ready to begin building the Titanic. For Harland and Wolff, the sinking of the Titanic was the beginning of the decline. During the First World War, the yard continued to make ships, but the slipways and gantries, which were built for the Titanic, were never to see work on that scale again. Rupert Kayser has discovered one last relic of the shipyard's golden age. This small, almost derelict vessel, until recently lying forgotten in a harbor in France, is the Nomadic. It was her job to ferry first-class passengers from continental Europe to the harbor where they'd board the Titanic. Of all the ships built by Harland and Wolff during the glory days of the early 20th century, the Nomadic is the only one that remains. A team of volunteers intends to restore her to her original grandeur. Local historian Stephen Cameron explains to Rupert why the return of the Nomadic is so important to the people of Belfast.
The same steel, the same material, the same rivets that are in this ship were also in Titanic as well. She's come home to Belfast, to the place where she was born, to the home of Titanic, and that's where she should be, and it's fantastic to have her back here in Belfast.
The Nomadic remains the last surviving link with the Titanic and Belfast's great era of shipbuilding. Nothing on the scale of the Titanic had ever been attempted before. It was the greatest engineering project of its time.
What's really impressed me is the sheer array of skills needed to build such a vessel. The parts needed to create Titanic, they range from some of the smallest ones like rivets, up to frames which were 80, 90 feet in length, plates that were 30 foot in length. All this amazing amount of material, all individually crafted, put together by hand to create the world's most luxurious ship.
What I've learned on my journey to rediscover the lost world of the Titanic is not only that White Star Lines built the most magnificent ocean liner the world had ever seen, but that they brought in an infrastructure into this booming city of Belfast. So not only did they build a huge shipyard, a community was being built as well around the shipyards, and that there were thousands of people, master craftsmen, shipyard workers, who were coming to this city to build this magnificent ship.
Although it ended in disaster and grief, the story of the Titanic is also one of skill, dedication, and extraordinary achievement.